Okay, so I grew up in Gilbert, Arizona, one of the safest cities in our nation as far as crime goes. I did see one time 4 cop cars pulling over a Mexican on a bicycle, so if that tells you anything. When I grew up there right there on Elliott Road, on the south side of it, and on the north side was a cotton gin. They still had a cotton gin back then. Cotton was and still is a big part of Arizona. They said like there's the 3 C's or 4 C's. It was cotton, clover, cattle, and copper. Did I say copper already? Copper, cotton, cattle, clover. Well, you need the clover to feed the cattle. So, but anyways, it was the Gilbert was like 10,000 people, and the biggest day in Gilbert was called the Gilbert Day Parade, and it was to celebrate the paving of Main Street. And probably the peak of that was, I think I was in 7th grade band, and we got to march that, and then also I think we saw John Wayne one time. This was in the early 80s. So I grew up there, but I also grew up Mormon. So it is and was a heavy Mormon community. Just very nice place where people could be delusional, which everybody, like one dude was banging his daughter, and people are cliquey and they're just deceptive, and of course you don't talk about any of that until later when everybody gets a divorce in the late 80s. But I tell you that because Mormons, Matt and Trey from South Park, they talk about this a little bit in some of their interviews for the Book of Mormon, the play. Mormons, in a very delusional way, are, a borderline could burst into song at any moment. And that's one of the sweet things that he finds, they both find about Mormons. So, but there is a lot of denial and a lot of just, pray the gay away type of, you need to have more faith in people. And but I tell you that, so I could tell you this, which was that you got to understand me growing up there. How do I say this? I didn't know I was in a dysfunctional family, right? We thought everything was pretty hunky-dory. Now, we did know that we stuck out from the rest of the Mormons because my parents were converts, right? That was kind of a dirty word. If you're a convert, yeah. But what you realize later, is that if you're like 2nd or 3rd generation Mormon, you're kind of an inbred, weird, hillbilly, creepy person. And there develops a culture over time. And in Gilbert, it was kind of creepy inbred. And what's funny is when we would go to like California Mormon church, it's like a snobby version of that. It's hilarious. But anyways, Mormon culture. So Mormons, my mother, not so much my dad, my mother really, they instill this weird sense. Okay, so Mormons think that they're the new Jews, right? So there's the whole thing about the Jews are the chosen people, and some people that practice Judaism, there seems to be a little bit of air to it, a sort of wouldn't say full out arrogance. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just the chosen people had to wander the fucking desert for 40 years. So, what did he choose you for, right? That's what you got to ask yourself. But, so the Mormons kind of feel like that, and they instill that in their children, and they indoctrinate them with, Sunday school and stories and all kinds of bullshit and garbage that, I didn't know it was bullshit and garbage until later on. So the idea, though, is to get everybody to be good, right? But then because Mormons are arrogant, they think that in order for you to be good, you have to be Mormon, right? You can't possibly be good on your own, right? And of course, all the other ones are evil, right? And they don't say that they're evil, but if you read that little black Mormon missionary handbook, it talks about how everybody's evil and So it doesn't say that. It just says you're not going to, the Mormon heaven. Of course you're not going to the Mormon heaven. First of all, the fucking thing doesn't exist anyway. And even if it does, I don't want to be part of it. It's a fucking scam. So I want to have full commitment and integrity. And that's why, what's funny too is being a Mormon. If you stop being a Mormon, like you tell them, you have to do paperwork. We had to sign, like in my, I think it was, mid-20s. I finally had enough of the church, and we had moved to our other place over there in Mesa, and I told my previous bishop, like, because I had a argument with him over some things, and I felt he wasn't treating me like a human being, and so I said, I don't need any help, just, leave me alone. And then when we got to the new place, this little, white shirt, short sleeve with a tie, looking like a process server guy in a really shitty Datsun pulls up, and I'm like, fuck, who did I piss off now? And of course, my dad was like involved in a bunch of white collar shit when I was a kid, and so, when he's like, if you ever see a process server, this is what you do, so I was like prepared for that. And then he's like, are you Patrick Chandler? I'm like, who's asking? Real aggressive. But it was the clerk or whatever, second counselor of the whatever ward I was in where I moved. See, and that's the thing is the Mormons, they used to do this. What were they doing? Oh, they made a little fort. Oh, it's a little homeless fort. So you just got to let them know that they're not welcome. That's all. I'll probably have to clean up this later. Those pallets are worth $10 each, by the way. So, but anyways, Mormons tracking you down. So Mormons do, they what you don't realize is that your information is public through the phone company. So, and back then I had a landline, and so lo and behold, guess who comes in and says, welcome to our new ward? And that was him. So, and at the time I'd been going through recovery and this self-help seminar place that was great, run by George Adair. I've talked about it a couple times. He started a foundation called Omega Vector, and I realized that in my heart of hearts, I could not be a Mormon, and so we had to go down there and sign some paperwork. So, but I tell you that story to tell you this story. Being a Mormon, you kind of have this delusion that you're chosen, and it's really weird. It gets really heavy-handed when boys get ready to go off to be missionaries, right? And it's especially weird because they definitely tell you not to masturbate, right? Which is, of course, the dumbest thing to tell a young man, because he's just a fucking sperm factory. And he's making creamy ropes for Jesus, and there's nowhere to go with those things, right? So I'll tell you a brief story. There was a guy in stand-up that was I was hosting that night, and he came in, and it was more like a confession. But he came in and talked about how when he was on his mission, his leg went numb, and he was having like health issues and stomach aches, and he went to the Mormon, the missionary doctor, and he's like, all right. And then they brought in the nurse and a little trough, and he's like, I gotta put a glove on. And he put a glove on and stick his finger up his butt and pressed on his prostate, and then a huge load comes out, and they catch it, and because he was true, because he didn't masturbate, and he's fucking 18, 19 years old, and so they had to get it out. Dude, they pray for wet dreams because they're not allowed to touch themselves. It's the dumbest thing. So, but anyways, again, Mormons, if you're lacking any sort of doubt, they tell you to double down, triple down, quadruple down on just having more faith. And again, they indoctrinate you to that this is the true church, this, and you bear your testimony. And it's technically it is a cult, technically, but it's a very nice cult. even though a lot of shady shit happens, if I talked about the scoutmasters touching people and lots of teenage pregnancy by, members of the church with, teenage girls and things like that. But that happens in like all of the churches. Now, again, I'm not excusing it at all. I'm just saying it's not what, if you're Mormon and you're listening to this, fucking smarten up, because they're definitely taking advantage of your dumbass. So anyways, I was one of the wayward Mormons, and at the time, this was in 91, no, let me back up. So it was, let me see. Oh, we got a visitor. We gotta go. That cart's worth $0.25 to me. Good Lord. Still got the quarter in it. See? It's got the quarter. I know. I don't really want to touch it. Somebody back here? Dirty. Gross. Well, it's my fault. You go looking for trouble and you're going to find it. So, but we'll just hang out for a minute and talk story and give whoever's here a little show. So, let me back this up. So, the church will indoctrinate you and discipline you, and I mean, it's not the worst thing. There are much worse things. I never got molested or anything like that, even though I was a really good looking kid. So it was kind of a letdown when I found out I didn't get molested. But like, I would molest me. I thought I was pretty good looking. But anyways, so let's see. My stepmom left us. She took the baby with her. We came home from school. She left a note. And she was like the only thing worth in our lives, living with my dad. My dad worked a lot. He drank a lot. And he was kind of downward spiraling. He ended up buying like a huge chunk of Greenlee County here in Arizona, but he was cheap and he didn't have a good team. And so they kind of set him up and set him on the path for jail. And that's when my stepmom took off. And so we were alone. And my sister has borderline personality disorder. And so her and my dad definitely did not get along. Like, my sister still would not break. Like, I broke. Like, my dad pulled out the belt, and just hearing the belt buckle, like, sends chills down my spine. Like, I was definitely like, yes, a mess. My name is Toby. It is not Kutukete. My name is Toby. And but my older sister, she had my cousin has this too. Like, his dad whipped up on him, and he just never broke. And so they didn't get along. So she left, and then my sister Summer didn't have any girlfriends to play with. Go down the street a little bit, Mama. And so it was just me and Tyson, my little brother, me and Tyson and Dad. Yeah, I know, it's gross. Again, no, we can go this way. Again, my fault. Looking for trouble, you find trouble. But so this is where it gets kind of weird. So I was getting into music. You can stop here. Okay. So I was getting into music, and so I started recording songs off the radio. So I had one of those clock radios that you could do that with. That was torrenting, pirating back then. And so I was looking for blank tapes, and I went through some of my dad's shit. I found a bar of silver underneath. It was like hidden in what it looked like a box of pens, but I opened it up and there was a fucking 1,000-ounce bar of silver. That was kind of weird, but whatever. And but I found some tapes, and I didn't want to erase them because I knew, like, I was trying to be somewhat respectful, but he wasn't around, so it wasn't like I could ask his permission. Like, I would go to bed and he wouldn't be home, and then I'd wake up and he was already gone. So he has that he's dead now. But he has that Trump thing where he only sleeps like 4 hours a night, and he's fine, which I cannot do. But the other thing that I have in my DNA is that when I start drinking, I want to party. I want to move and get work done, and it gives me super strength. It gives me energy. So I don't drink because the lack of sleep starts fucking with me. But anyways, so I listened to the tape, and I'm out by the Cotton Gin skating and boarding around, and I listened to the tape, and it's a palm reading. And of course I'm like, whatever. But this lady was fucking tits McGee. She was on the money. And she read my dad like front and back, like, and I think Robin, my stepmom, and my dad were going, they were just trying, they're at the end of the rope. So they were trying anything to sort of hold the marriage together. And they even had a baby to help seal the deal. This is, of course, the worst thing you can possibly do. But so anyways, this fortune teller, this reader, whatever you want to call him, she's very, very accurate. So, and being a young kid, I was amazed and floored. And then the lady started talking about me, and she started telling him about me, and she's like, have you heard of Omega Vector? And my dad's like, no. He goes, I'm not into any of that shit. And so the lady says, your son he will excel at that. I highly recommend he goes to that. And of course, my dad never said anything to me. I never heard anything. And then probably about a month later, my dad came home drunk and got a little pissed that the dishes weren't done and decided to shove my face in it. And while my face was down there, I grabbed a broken piece of glass and cut my forehead so that he would definitely go to jail that night. And he did. Because I had started shoplifting with my bad influence friend Russ. I'll blame everything on Russ because Russ is a fucking car wreck then and now, so it's fine. I was the good Mormon boy, right? What's funny though is his mom thought I was the bad influence on him, which is hilarious. But so anyways, I was in the First Advantage program, and because I lived in Gilbert, I went to the one in Gilbert, and that's where I started recovery. I didn't know it was called recovery. I didn't know what self-help was. All I knew is that my mom was burning through books on tape and all kinds of stuff, and it was not helping her because she's a lunatic. So she would definitely preach this stuff to us, and it was really annoying. But what was cool was, I think it was that summer, I got to hang out with one of her boyfriends named Bob Harbeck, and he would listen to NPR all day and then self-help tapes. And that's when I really started realizing that I was in a fucked up family, and I was experiencing a lot of abuse, and I didn't know, and my counselor, Ann Vadachingo, saved my life and helped me get in touch with, I had no idea that I was having feelings. I had no idea that I was being bullied at school and at home. I had no idea. I just was suffering and doing the best that I could with what I had, which is basically just jacking off a lot. And finding out that you can click the box that says bill me later, and then you can put a fake name in there, and then for like 6 months you get Penthouse, Playboy, Fox Magazine, Jugs, whatever you wanted, and went to whatever, Joseph Smith, whatever name that you put on the tag, the bill would come to Joe, and guess what? Joe doesn't live there, so. But that's how I was surviving 8th grade and 9th grade. And then I got in the fight with my dad, and my dad went to jail, and which actually created a bigger problem, which was, where am I going to live? Like, it was just me and Tyson anyway. Like, we were basically bachelors living there, and my dad had this big box of change that we would dig into every night, and we would order pizza because he didn't want, he wasn't there to make dinner. It was just us. And we'd gone through several housekeepers. Again, my dad was making very good money, but he was not there. So what was it? The first one was Angelina. That was the Mexican girl that I lost my virginity to, which was awesome.
Girl.
woman. She was a full woman, and she totally molested me, and I loved it. And that's how I lost my virginity, and I had a broken leg, and I still managed to sweep up them titties. And the cherry on top on that one was when, because before that I had only, I definitely had the magazines. The other thing was we would shoplift from Circle K and steal magazines that way. But we found out that at the time, Penthouse Forum and Penthouse Letters was way more erotic. We didn't know this. We didn't know about, novellas and things like that. And back then too, Penthouse Letters was not gay. Now it's like super gay and bi-curious and all that other shit. So I don't recommend it now if you're straight. But at the time, that was the only training manual that I had, because sex ed definitely was missing from Gilbert Public Schools. And but after I finished my due diligence with Angelina, I said, "How did I do?" And she's like, "You're better than your father." And I was like, "What? Like, what?" And it wasn't until probably a while later, word had gotten out, because of course I told my brother Tyson, and he told my dad, and then like the stepmom got really furious, and was basically treating the situation like I got molested, and I'm like, ugh, bitch, please. And so, but anyways, my dad was like bragging on the beach. He was drinking margaritas out of a milk jug. He was buying it by the gallon. In Mexico. Yeah, you can do that in Mexico. And he invites me up, and our neighbor was rich, and his name was Bob, and he's like, "Bob, here comes my boy. What's up, boy?" And this was very out of character for my father, and he's like, "Tell him what you did, son." I was like, "What did I do?" He's like, "Tell him about Angelina." I was like, oh, like I got embarrassed, but I mean, but I saw that he was proud of me. So it was kind of like, okay, now I get to brag. And then before I could open up my mouth, my dad says, "How's my dick taste?" I'm like, oh, shit. All right, Dad, thanks. Like, I'll go back to playing at the beach and being a boy. So that was way more fun than adult stuff and, getting into the tang and all that shit. But so I end up having to move in with my mom. And she, God, it's such a small world. So my dad he had invested in a couple of condos on the beach down there in Rocky Point. And one of the guys that he met was Jack Conant. And Jack and Carol was his wife. And Jack had ended up having a heart attack playing tennis. He loved it. He was a fucking great guy. And Carol then was living down there, and they owned a lot of real estate. They were loaded, and she did not act like it. She was a great lady. And waste management, get into it. So she was, they were in waste management, and they ended up having to own a condo in Mesa. And something happened after Jack died where they did an audit at the IRS, and it was kind of like in between. And they had rented it out to my mom, and they weren't charging my mom rent. So my mom got to live there for like 2 or 3 years rent free, which really helped us out, because now it was a 2-bedroom condo, upstairs, downstairs, and 4 kids. And my mom, who was skillless, right? The only thing she was good at was being cute and getting pregnant. And so now she had to work a series of just receptionist jobs and trying to keep things together. And then her and my dad are like fucking fighting. My dad's having us throw eggs at her. Like, ugh. Anyways. So all this turmoil is going on. And my mom, like I said, my mom is like, balls deep into self-help. And she comes home and she has a letter, and she says, "I've been to a program." This is my mom talks like a little bit like, what's his name? I forgot now. He's a comedian. I love him. Gaffigan. Anyways, my mom comes home. "You gotta listen to this. This is great. You gotta really go to this. This is called Omega Vector." And as soon as she said the name, I was like, yes, I'll go. And she's like, "You've heard of it?" I was like, "Yeah, but I don't want to get into it." So, and it was from the tape that I heard as a kid. I should say younger. I was a child back then too, even though I started getting into you could do the subscription thing with VHS tapes. And next thing you know, I'm stashing VHS tapes all over the house. And then me and my brother are like having contests to see how far we can jizz. I got the record, by the way. I hit 12 feet, which, if you can imagine, in being in the bottom of the Gilbert Junior High swimming pool in the deep end, I could still jizz up onto the lifeguard, which I hope at the time was Melanie Brown, who I had a huge crush on. But, oh, there's a drone up there. So anyways, again, I was just coping, and also just, teenager. That's the way it goes. You jizz a lot. And sometimes if you have a little brother, you guys help each other. I don't mean it that way, but just, whatever. Listen to Richard Christie. Richard Christie's stories are worse than mine. So Richard Christie is on the Stern Show. But, so anyways, we're living in the condo. She tells me about Omega Vector. And that's when I was 16. I was the only kid that passed my mom's driving test, which was that she should be able to sit in the car, put a drink on the dash, and not have to worry about it. And I was a great driver because of my dad. My dad started me driving when I was 12. I drove him. He fell asleep. I drove him to Los Angeles from California, or from Arizona, when I was 12. And he had been let me drive in the back lot and just get really good at it. So anyways, I go to what was called Teen Omega Vector. It was a teen version of the program, which was a little abbreviated because teens are different than adults. And everything in my life showed up that night. I was late. I procrastinated. I was blaming myself. I was beating myself up, and it was getting dark. And I finally found the place. There wasn't Google Maps back then either, so. But I found the place, and I came in, and they were playing the first two pieces of music, and they sat down, and immediately I just started weeping. And that's when my life really changed. And I finally found a place that I felt like I belonged. I felt like I could experiment with who I wanted to be, and it was a very safe place. And I spent a lot of time there in Omega Vector, and I did a lot of great work. I later became a staffer, and as an adult. And anyways, that's I got to meet. I was there I had gone through 3 or 4 times before I had even met George Adair, because it was Greg and Barb Fry, Australian Mark, Mark Lewis, and Anne Marie, who were facilitating and staffing for the teen program. So, but I don't know, nothing was like it. It was not like going to Alateen or Coda or anything like that. And they even said it, which was that, if they wanted to be like one of those AA programs or 12-step programs, why have a program at all? Because there's already AA and 12-step programs. And so, again, if you want to read about that, read Man's Search for Meaning. George even wrote a book. I forget the name of it, but then also you can go to that website and read more about George Adair. And what George was really good at, it was pulling a lot of ancient wisdom and ancient teachings, and also some modern revelation stuff, and putting it in a package that was palatable and applicable for everyone. And of course, not everybody that I went through, turned out like me. But not everybody is me. But it was like a sense of belonging and being, and in that turbulent time when I was getting just pussy thrown at me. A lot of times I was sort of, in my head, the pussy that I pushed away. I know Sherry's laughing at this because she already knows what's coming. So. This was the late 80s, and AIDS was everywhere, and I was super scared of it, and I'd only barebacked once, and then you just thought people would sneeze on you or cry on you and you had AIDS. And so the pussy either that I didn't get or that I turned down in my head was God's way of protecting me from some sort of STD. And of course, I ended up banging some floozy at the Wendy's that I worked at who was vagina so large. I mean, it was literally a pickle down a hallway. She was super hot, but when I stuck it in, she was like, I don't even feel you. And I got a fucking baby leg for a dick. Poor Sherry, her vagina looks like an old catcher's mitt now. It's just torn and just scarred, and like I just tore it up. But this girl, I mean, it was like she had just had a baby, and it was like nothing. But I guess I caught the clap from her, and then I ended up giving it to my girlfriend at the time, who's letting me bear back that shit. And anyways, there was an embarrassing moment in my life where I was at the free clinic, of course, because we didn't have insurance, and my mom, she couldn't afford that shit. And guess who was at the hospital that day? Mark Lewis, my Omega facilitator training guy. And so it was just super embarrassing. But I think what I was trying to tell you with the Omega stuff was that I always felt like God was watching out for me, and that God had a purpose for me. And that's the kind of stuff that they teach you in church, Mormons. That's what they do in the Mormon church, is that, God's always got a plan for all of us. And I didn't know any better. And I sort of led that through my life. And so I got older, and I just found Sherry, and it was like kismet. It was like we were meant to be. It was a blind date. I just felt like I really needed to seal the deal, and it was sort of convenient, and also just everything seemed to match up. And so I ended up marrying her, and I was joining the Air Force, and some girl had ended up twisting her ankle, and so my opening came in, and so we had to leave early, and we ended up having a really quick wedding, I should say, and then like a couple of days later, like a week later, I was gone. Like I was already in MEPS, and not even that. And so I was like a newlywed off in the military, and then of course me being, like I had really integrated a lot of the stuff about taking things at face value, being earnest, being honest, and forthright, all the Boy Scout stuff, and sort of living that truth. And it was weird because there was a moment in basic training where they said, does anyone know the definition of integrity? And I was like, really enthusiastic, and threw my hand up, and of course they're like, even the TI, the technical instructor, she's like, don't ever volunteer for anything in the military. And I was like, no, I am going to volunteer, because what I learned in recovery and what I learned in Omega was that the kind of enthusiasm that you have as a kid, what if you had that as an adult? What if you actually applied yourself in a way, there was many failures in my life, and it doesn't happen anymore because I know how to apply myself now. But that was always my failings in school, in life as a kid, was that I just never applied myself. And at the time I didn't realize that there was nobody was showing me anything that I was interested in. And so, but anyways, that's why I suggest everybody get a personality test to find out what you're good at, and find out what things are going to make you happy, and do those things, because being happy is way more important than money. And I say that, but we'll see. We'll talk more about that. So anyways, let me see. So I got in the military. Oh, and so I got this secret. This is the secret I'm going to tell you guys about. So I was 18, and I was kind of floundering. And this was before I met Sherry. And back then, there was a organization called YDE, Youth Development Enterprises. And it was a couple of rich Mormons that had figured out, or, created this, I don't want to call it slave labor, but that's what it was. It was they would teach you about hard work and about integrity and all these other things by picking pineapple and exploiting you. So, but it was actually a lot of fun, and it was very hard work. But basically, I took the minimum package, which was $1,800, and it paid for flights there and back, some food, some things like that, and some supplies. But mostly, they just paid you $4 an hour to do a $15 an hour job working in really hot, humid pineapple fields, picking pineapple. I don't regret it at all. So, but, and especially because I was already 18, so I got to kind of skirt some of the rules. Like everyone else had to go to church every week, and of course I was rebelling, and I had listened, of course, to Paul's Boutique, and where MCA talks about having his own religion, and so guess who had their own religion at 18? That's right, me. And what was it? One of the Mormon. These are all missionaries that haven't been married, because they're gay, but nobody's gay in the church. You're just not married. So anyways, they're like, "What do you do at your church?" And I go, well, "That's private. That's private church. We don't talk about." It was like before Fight Club, before I knew about Fight Club. But so anyways, and then mostly I would just journal and then write poetry and then jack off without being bothered. And so you weren't supposed to jack off either at YD, but we did, because we would sneak like Lowrider magazine, and there was another magazine that was like a truck magazine. And when you're that horny, bikinis or even half a nip, dude, that's going to set you off. So it was great. But I think one time they yelled at me for jacking off at night, and they're like, "Quit jacking off, Pat." And I'm like, "I'm not," and they're like, and then I go again, and they're like, "Stop jacking off." I was like, "God damn it." It's very embarrassing. But so one day in the pineapple fields, I didn't feel good. Something was, I don't want to say wrong, but just I didn't feel good. Something was like weird. And you had to do push-ups if you cursed. And I said, damn. I'm like, damn's not a curse word. It's in the Bible. And they're like, it's a curse word. So I didn't want to do push-ups because I felt that was wrong. And so they're like, go sit in the van. You're not going to get paid for this half hour. It's basically like a timeout. So I sulk, and I was like, whatever, I'm going to, rehydrate and drink some water and just chill out. And so I'm in the van, and of course there's, I say of course, but whenever you're in a pineapple field, there's a lot of pine, they just call it pine when you're in a pineapple field and you're picking pine. When you're picking pine, some of the fruit gets really ripe, and it attracts like a little black beetle. It's harmless, but they fly everywhere, and they're just everywhere. And I'm in the back of the van, and of course there's a couple of them flying on the windows, and I'm just looking at them, and I start to feel a little like dizzy and euphoric. And all of a sudden I start weeping, but not like crying, like cathartic, but just sort of like my eyes were like just really watering, and like I felt this what they call it, the comforter, and it felt like a warm blanket coming over me, and I fell to my knees, and I was crying, and I bowed my head, and then I could feel a light penetrate the top of my skull where you wear a yarmulke, and all of a sudden my mind is everywhere in the universe. I could every question I ever had, all the knowledge that ever is or ever was, I was one with it, and I was moving all over the universe. I was moving at the speed of thought, and then I felt this presence come to me in that world, and it wasn't Jesus, but it was like somebody like him, and they just kind of calmed me down, and they said, actually they didn't say anything. They just sort of calmed me down, and I guess they had something to tell me. And when I felt that presence, I was just overwhelmed, and I was like, I'm your servant. Please tell me what to do. Whatever you're going to tell me, please tell me. I was just open to it. And then of course I'm not hearing it. It's just in my mind that this message is coming. And the message that came was, follow your heart. Boy, was I disappointed. I'm taken all the way across the universe through this mind warp tunnel, and I'm told, follow your heart? Like, what? And as soon as I sort of was confused by this, I came to, I could feel my face was all cold, and I was like, what just happened? And I got a little delirious. I had this hyper sense of that Jesus was coming, and I related to sometimes. I'm sure you guys are too young, but when I was growing up, especially when we would visit LA, there's a lot of people like this that were like, Jesus is coming, and it's sort of this. It's like a panic, sort of a manic feeling. I didn't know when Jesus was coming, but that's what it felt like. And the counselor and everybody, the counselor was heading back. What's his name? McIntyre. Can't remember his name, but he's like, are you okay? And I was like, Jesus is coming. And I was like, sort of in a panic. And then he was like, oh shit, like this guy's off his rocker or whatever. And so I calmed down and I'm like, oh, what the fuck just happened to me? I don't really tell everybody about it. I don't tell anybody about it. And it wasn't until maybe a couple of weeks later, there was a guy that was in our, I forget the Hawaiian name for, it was whatever the name of our troop, our flight, our group. His name was Steve, and he was from Idaho. Sweetest kid I ever met. He taught himself to read upside down so that he could hand you the scriptures and then read to you while you were holding the book so that you could continue where he left off. That's the kind of stuff that he did. And if you asked him for anything, he would give you double. If you asked for food, he would give you double. If you asked for a shirt, he would give you more. It's just really the sweetest, most genuine person that I ever met. Like if anybody ever was the epitome of being a Mormon, it was him, and the kindness and the sweetness that all the Mormons sort of search for and try to be. And so a couple of weeks later, we sort of found ourselves together in the laundry room, and I don't know why, but I think because we were both 18. We didn't have to go to church with the rest of the guys or something. Oh, that's right. They told him not to go to church. So what happened is we're in the laundry room, and he starts asking me some questions that were kind of weird. And I told him about my experience, and that it happened in the pineapple field. And then he tells me about an experience that he had, which was that he had a spirit come to him and tell him that he needs to be righteous and to be true and to tell the leaders of YDE that if they didn't stop exploiting these kids, that the program was going to be dissolved in 6 months. And that they were wicked and, all this kind of stuff. And Steve did that. In fact, Steve didn't want to do this. This was completely against his nature and the kind of character that he was. Definitely not confrontive, at all. Just really, really passive. And so he fasted and prayed, and that's what you do in the church. They tell you to do in order to prepare yourself for God to talk to you. And so we're working in the hot sun in very humid conditions, and we're doing really hard labor. And this guy is fasting. He's only drinking water. He's not eating any food. And he's doing this for 3 days so that he can make sure that he has the truth from God. And he goes to the guys, the leaders of the camp, the program, and he tells them this, and they ended up getting really upset with him, and they ended up getting his dad on the phone. And his dad was the same way, and his dad said, son, just do whatever they tell you to do. If they tell you to deny it, then you deny it. If they tell you not to say it, don't say it. Just do whatever they tell you to do. Just get through this. And that's what he did. But of course, this is a huge, it's a corruption in him, because he did everything that he was told to do, and yet this truth is inside of him. And so he shared this with me, and we felt really bonded, but not like something was definitely going on. And the west side of Maui is, especially at that time, this was in the early 90s, And we went through Hurricane Iniki, and gosh, it was so magical because we would go out at night and there would be this halo around the moon, and it was just, I don't know, it was something about just being really close to nature and just sort of being very appreciative of being on the planet. And that's Maui. That's just, I highly recommend, if you can ever go. But we both sort of went back to our normal lives, our normal work schedules, and nothing happened. We went home. We went our separate ways. Sten Larson, he sent me a postcard, which was a picture of me and my buddies, and that was the last I heard from most everybody. There was a couple of guys that I tried to keep in touch with. Bobby Milam, Chris Neild was one of my really best friends while we were there, and Stucky, and but anyways, that was it. And then I met Sherry. Did I ever tell you about it?
Yeah.
I did?
Mm-hmm.
So I had this, I had this experience, and I don't know, what do you do with it? And if I take it literal, it's to follow my heart. So I did my best to do that. Well, what was weird was when I was in basic training, what's the great thing about Mormon church is that it's 3 hours long. And so it gave me a really good break to get away from, being an airman and just cleaning the fuck out of everything. And there was one moment that I had in the Air Force that I still carry with me, which was that I broke. We were supposed to read the instructions, and I would just skip over most of the instructions, and I wasn't complying. I wasn't surrendering to the process. And the whole flight was around me, and because I kept doing something wrong. I was like folding the socks wrong or something like that. And then all of a sudden I had like a small seizure, and I came to, and everybody kind of looked at me weird. And after that, I could see everything. I complied with everything. I was super happy. The job that they gave me was picking out the hairs in the mop after they were done with it. I had to clean the mop and clean the supply closet. That was the worst job that you could get, and I loved it. And I was able to surrender, and I had peace and serenity, and I was definitely coping. I see that now, and I ended up going to church there. Was it? Yeah, I think it was in basic training. Lackland. And Mormon church is not exciting. It's very, very boring. And I went to bear my testimony, and I told people about the experience that I had. I was reaching. I was looking for some sort of comfort, some sort of sign or something from God or something like that. Well, what I found out is in the church, if you talk about stuff like that, you're ostracized immediately. And that's what I got when I was there. I ended up I think I just played hooky using church, because it's not very long. It's like 6 weeks, but it's 6 working day weeks at least when I was going through Lackland. But I made it through. And so then I got stationed in Keesler for my training. And that was a whole thing. It was great, but that's another story. But I was delayed because of my 398 check, my security background. So back then, I think it was 1 in 5 or 1 in 10, they would do what's called an interim top secret clearance. And that was so that there was a population of people that had really thorough, trustable people. And that's what they decided to give me. I was that guy. And so it took like an extra, was it 3 months?
Yes.
Yeah, and what's funny is they make you work on it. So I had to, after I finished my training, I had to go down to a place where we would sit in these little rooms, and I would have to do my own research and find phone numbers and names and all that stuff. And then you give it to the investigators, and then they go investigate you and all that kind of stuff. And But it ended up delaying like another 4 months, and life gets really weird when you're. They move you into what's called a ghost bay, which is where it's a section of the building that hasn't been used in a while, and that's where they put the misfits and the guys that are getting discharged. And I met a guy that scored a 40 on his ASVAB, which was the very minimum. That's retarded. The guy was retarded, but he was the sweetest guy, but he was like really retarded. Like he should not have been in the Air Force, and he was getting out. But another guy was gay, and then it was my buddy Mike Honecker, who just I don't remember Mike. Me and Mike are still friends to this day. He just sends me dirty stuff on Facebook, which is fun. But me and Mike really bonded, and we reconnected a couple of years ago, and we're still friends. It's great. But so. I find out I'm getting orders to Hawaii. So I'm back to Hawaii. And that experience was great, but there was a lot of horrible things that happened while I was there. And of course I say horrible, what I really mean is as far as white people perspective of horrible, which is not very horrible. But one of the things that I ran into was I was not doing well after I was station qualified. What station qualified means that you can run a shift by yourself, and it was the comm station there. Hickam Tech Control is what it was called, and I was having issues on some of the testing, like they want you to test. I was an E3, and they want you to test, it was E4. And they want you to test for E5, and I was not interested in re-upping. I was not interested in any of that stuff. I was like, that is the dumbest thing in the world, because you only make I think it was only like $50 or $100 more a week, but you got like 4 times the responsibility. So I'm like, what do I want to be E5 for? I don't need that. And they didn't like that attitude. And one of the things that I found out about myself, because I thought I was dyslexic, because I think my sister's dyslexic, along with the borderline personality disorder. And so I got tested. I went to psych and I asked to be tested, and they gave me a personality test, which was like 1,000 questions long. And I tell you what, it was like Dionne Warwick and the Psychic Network. She told me all kinds of things about myself that I had that I didn't even realize. And she's like, "Did you lie anywhere on this test?" I go, No. I was like extra honest, because I want to see what's wrong with me, because I really want to know what's wrong with me. I had problems with authority and all this other stuff. And so she says, first of all, you need to get out of the Air Force. I was like, why? And she's like, well, she says, you have a personality that is, like if you're doing something stupid, they had me doing lots of stupid things. Like the base commander did not like the rocks. Like there was large river rocks that were, I guess, too bright. And so he had us painting them brown. The backs of the stop signs were too reflective, so he had us painting those brown. Everything was being painted brown. And they had me on the recycle program, which was really the trash program. And because, sorry, I got to back up a little bit. So the Pineapple Express was at that time and came through. And it's probably still true, but at the time, there was a lot of rain that came through Honolulu. And there was still paper-wrapped cables in the sewers from leftover from World War II. And so when the sewers flooded with all that rainwater, it shorted out everything. And so we ended up having to go on 12-hour shifts to sort of tend to any circuits. Because if you guys don't know, Hickam is the center of the Pacific Theater. And so all the data from the surrounding areas, from the Marshall Islands, from Alaska, from California, all collect there, and then are redistributed to the rest of. It's not that top secret. It's really actually common knowledge, actually. But so anyways, that was basically our job there. And so we had to go on 12-hour shifts. And so I could not leave the floor. I had to stay on the main, comm center where we were at. And our fucking commander, this dickhead, Colonel Alexander, piece of shit, he comes in and I call the room to attention, and I happen to be eating spaghetti revenge. And so I call the room to attention, and he sees me eating and looks at me like I'm some sort of savage because I'm not eating in the break room. And, I didn't have to explain myself, because I was like, we're on 12-hour shifts. We're not allowed to leave the floor. Like, this is what we got to do in order to keep the station running. And so I didn't think anything of it. And at the time too, I had discovered bulletin boards. And so there was a base bulletin board, and it's called the Falcon BBS. And sometimes I would dial in there when I probably should have been working. And I'll tell you a short joke. There's this little black guy, Airman Sandiford, really cool guy. He worked in the back, and that's where I'd go and use one of their computers to get online and just tinker around on the bulletin board. And I used a fake name. I used Andy Adams in order to be anonymous on the bulletin board, which I thought was pretty common, right, for bulletin boards and the internet at the time. You certainly don't use your real name, because that way, how could you be honest? And apparently on the base bulletin board, you were supposed to use your real name. And so I pissed off a lot of people by saying things like, it was right when McVeigh was being tried for the Oklahoma City bombing. And I just thought it was really gross the way that they pulled him through the crowds and they were yelling, hang him, kill him, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, they definitely didn't need to do that. And what happened to innocent until proven guilty? And I just felt really disgusted with the way that they were doing this. And I aired it out on the bulletin board. And there was a couple officers that actually agreed with me, because I was saying that when you do that, you remove, like, it was very biased. And just, anyways, I was expressing an opinion that was not popular for the sake of being devil's advocate, not for the sake of my own, but whatever. So, but as far as the joke goes with Airman Sandiford, so this fucking retard tech sergeant, RJ, he ran this stupid program called Reach Back, and we used to call it Reach Around because it was like gay. It was super dumb and gay. Like, it was all we did was dog on it. It was fucking lame. So, but anyways, RJ comes back there looking for a labeler. I didn't know he was looking for a labeler, but he goes, hey, have you seen the little brother? And I was like, well, Airman Sandiford? And RJ's looking at me like, what? He goes, I'm looking for the labeler, the little brother labeler. And I go, oh. And I was kind of paranoid anyway, because I knew I wasn't supposed to be on the bulletin board. So that's a wonderful moment in my Air Force career where, I could just see RJ having to go to sensitivity training for being racist, but he wasn't. He was not calling Airman Sandiford a little brother. I was the one that was confused. So he was a short guy. He was like Kevin Hart. He was just a little petite black man. He was very nice. But anyways, so what I think happened was, so then Colonel Alexander comes on the floor, and basically I found out Colonel Alexander wanted me removed from the floor, and he didn't want me on, which by the way was a really sweet job, because we would only work like 6 hours, and I worked like 4 days a week, and nothing happened in the middle of the night. And so that got taken away, and then they tried to put me back on being a cop because we were at Hickam. My neighbor was a sergeant, and they ended up deploying him to Korea to do war games over there, and also because North Korea was acting like a butthole, and they wanted to show force, and so they sent all our cops over to Korea, and then they started recruiting from our squadron in order to be what they called security police augmentees, and they had me certified, and like I was like, basically you're just a security guard with a fucking AR-15 or M16 as they call it there, but and I had to get fucking range qualified and all that shit. But the great thing was I ended up going to Cayena Point. I chose that one even though it extended your work time 2 hours, but go Google some pictures of Cayena Point. It's like one of the most beautiful places on the earth, and it's just peaceful and nice. And the stupid Air Force put a big fucking radar station right there on the mountains and sort of claimed that area. But even though there's like wild pigs there and they hunt for them, it's wonderful. So, but anyways, so all of this happens, and then I have to test for staff sergeant, and I get like the third lowest score in the squadron history. And they, the thing happens with Colonel Alexander, and he pulls me off my thing, and just everything is just kind of unraveling in the Air Force for me. And so then I go get the personality test because I think I'm dyslexic, but it turns out I'm not. She says, you just have this personality where if you're doing something stupid, you'll say, hey, this is stupid. And I go, yeah, because it's stupid. And she's like, that doesn't work well in the Air Force. So she starts to counsel me and say, there are programs where you can ask for early out. And so at the time, Sherry and I's marriage was not doing well. We were, retrospect 2020, we realized we were just very young. And there was no guidance. None of our parents were very good parents. And there was nobody really to reach out to. And I had reached back to the church, and we started going to church. And then this church starts talking about how gay people are bad, even though it's Hawaii, which is like totally LGBTQ. And it was just weird mixed messages. And at the same time, I'm reading this book called Celestine Prophecies. Now, in the Celestine Prophecies, if you look at a page, I think it's 99 or 100, I think it's page 99, the guy experiences the same thing that I experienced. And so I have this sort of weird connection that God is talking to me. And this is a sign. And that's when I ended up getting into the Patriot movement and finding out about that and about sovereignty and that sort of thing, because there is or was a big Patriot movement at that time. Of course, they shut all that shit down with 9/11. But anyways, that's another story. But so the counselor's telling me I should get out, and I put in for an early out, and guess what? I got it. And again, I thought, this was God's way of sort of just, helping me out because I'm so special. Well, one of the things that they said in the personality report was that I had 2 benign personality disorders, and one was called schizophrenia, and that's where it's someone that thinks that everything has a mystical or spiritual value to it, which I was like, that does kind of fit me, because I'm I'm God's chosen one and God's talking to me. And, it was right up my alley. The other one was, exactly. The other one was benign narcissism. So, which coincided with the, I'm God's chosen one sort of thing. It wasn't blatant narcissism where, like I think that I'm better than other people. It was just that I felt like God was talking to me, Here we are, magically in Hawaii again, and God's talking to me again. So I ended up getting out a year early, and I find out, and I have to move everything that I own off the island in 11 days, and that's a very difficult task. And prior to that, I was on the trash detail, and the commander seemed like he was really trying to just punish me. And I had heard a rumor that the commander said that I tried to spill hot spaghetti on him when I called the room to attention, and he's the one that ordered me to. Of course, when you're in the military, you don't ever hear that. You hear it from whoever's in charge of you. They tell you what to do, and you do what the fuck they tell you to do. And so at the time, they told you that, there's an open door policy. If you ever want to talk, you want to go talk to the commander. And so I went to go talk to the commander. No, if you're in the military, open door policy does not exist. That's a lie. So I wanted to talk to the commander because I didn't want to spread the rumor. I didn't, because if they tell you to go up your chain of command, now I got to tell everybody in my fucking chain of command. So I'm talking about my supervisor, my shop supervisor, my first shirt, the chief, the fucking lieutenant, and then a captain, and then the colonel. And so I got to tell, and the major too, who I happened to buy my air conditioner from. So I got to tell all these people before I talk to the colonel. No, I don't want to involve all these people. I wanted to go talk to the colonel. So I persist. I finally get a meeting, and then I think it was 2 or 3 days before, I had the day off, and I just felt this calm again come over me, this warm blanket that was like, nothing you say is going to change his mind. Don't waste his time. Go and cancel the appointment. And that's what I did. I got fucking all uniformed up, Went down to the, was it? Yeah, he's a colonel. Yeah, he was a light colonel. Went down to the colonel's office, talked to the senior airman, and I said, hey, I have an appointment on Wednesday. Go ahead and cancel it. And of course, I'm not going to get into the fucking Holy Spirit told me to, right? I'm not going to tell him that. So I just said, cancel my appointment. And he's like, got it, done. And so then Wednesday, of course, come and goes. And then Friday, that's when I get called in there. And I get called into the fucking chief's office. And I'm like, I only met the chief like once. And then our previous chief was a bit of a dick, which is rare because typically the chief is a good guy. But the guys hated him. And my wife worked at the sign shop. And so they had me make a plaque for the chief that said, it was in Hawaiian. And it had like little footsteps like on the beach. And it was meant to commemorate his retirement and all this kind of stuff. And we gave him the plaque as you know, as his retirement. And then he's like, what does this say in Hawaiian? And I said, oh, it's an old Hawaiian saying. And was it Dave Cook is the one that told me to do this, and I did it. So in Hawaiian, we put, may the bruises on our backs finally heal. So, which I thought was an awesome burn, and it's in Hawaiian. So it's like, but anyways, you know, apparently you're not supposed to say that to the chief. But so anyways, I get called on a Friday, and I smell like fucking garbage because I'm on garbage patrol and working at the quote unquote recycling center. And the chief's like, sit there, have a seat. And this is like 4 p.m. when in Hawaii, they have what's called Aloha Fridays, where you work in the morning, you go to lunch, you come back, and then you go home. That's what Fridays are in Hawaii. It's fucking great. You go to the beach, spend time with family. So this is 4 o'clock on a fucking Friday. And I'm like, where's fucking Aloha Friday? Like something's wrong or whatever. And so the chief comes in and says, go in there and give your reporting statement and just sort of go with the flow. And I was like, okay, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So I kind of clean myself up. And I walk into the room, you know, you knock and you do your reporting statement, which is you salute and you say, in my case, I would say, Airman Chandler reports as ordered. And then the lieutenant returns the salute. And then I look around me and it's my whole fucking chain of command. It's my Sergeant Richardson, it's my shirt, it's like a bunch of other people that I guess are witnesses. And then the fucking lieutenant who I had hung Christmas lights with on base on the water tower there on Hickam. So I knew him, is now yelling at me, telling me how much of a shitty airman I am, that I wasted the commander's time and missed my appointment. And I was like, what? Like, you can get senior airmen in here. I canceled the appointment like almost a week ago. And I was smiling because I thought about how ridiculous this is and how I can, you know, easily clear this up. And then the lieutenant yells at me and says, wipe that fucking smile off your face, airman. And I didn't know what to do, so I put on a big frown. And so I have this big frown, and this fucking lieutenant is yelling at me, and they end up giving me a letter of reprimand, of course, which disappears when you go to your next base or when you just leave the Air Force. But the fact that I had this whole fucking chain of command yelling at me for something they knew that I didn't do just really fucked with my brain. And at the same time, I was learning about the Patriot movement, and I was like, fuck these guys, fuck the military, fuck the government. Like, I was like, fuck all these guys. And then, of course, at the same time, Beavis and Butthead were on. And there's an episode where Beavis and Butthead have to get a lie detector test. And it's like, you know, it's hilarious. And so they put me through a lie detector test. And I failed because I kept thinking about Beavis and Butthead. It's not because I wanted to take over the government or anything like that. So it was just this shitstorm. And then I got out of the military, and I had to out-process. And I had to go back to my job, my work building, shitty little comm building, and get all these signatures that says, you know, like, you've returned all your library books and all this other stuff. And so I end up getting in through the security door because, you know, you just call and one of your guys lets you in. And lo and behold, guess who is coming out as I'm going in? The lieutenant. And so I'm like, I give him the snappiest fucking salute I ever gave anybody. And I go, Lieutenant, I'm getting out. And he's like, what? Nobody told me. And I was like, you're the first to know, sir. And he's like, okay. And I was like, oh, fucking that guy. What a piece of shit. So, but, and then, fucking 9 days later, I find myself at the fucking North Shore, and I decide to frolic in the beach all day on a cloudy day with no sunscreen, and I got roasted like a lobster, and then I flew home on a fucking Mac flight in fucking pain and covered in noxema, and that was my Air Force career in a nutshell. 36 months out with an honorable discharge and plenty of stories. And I think I told my mom one time about my experience in Maui, and she didn't really know how to handle it. And I think I told it another time when I got out in church, and that was not advised. They were like, only the prophet talks to God, not you, even though we talk and say that God talks to you, but he really doesn't. So, and then I was working at Speed Fam, and the movie Contact had come out with Jodie Foster, which is one of my favorites. It's very well produced, and then the ideas in it are just wonderful. But and we saw it at the Cine Capri before it closed down here in Phoenix. That was a big deal. And so what's really touching about that movie is that Jodie Foster's character is enlightened with this experience, and then she goes back to the world and nobody believes her, and it's like, how do you share this? And I got out into the parking lot and I just wept, and I cried for like a good 10 minutes because I completely related to her character, that I have this thing inside of me, and I don't know how to share it. I don't know if it even happened. I don't know what to do with it. And so that's my story. I talk to God, and of course, you start sharing it with more people, and you find out that actually the experience is not common. What's his name? Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. He talks about it a little bit, and I started talking to people in Omega about it, people that I was going through, and it's actually again it's not common, but it happens, and it's that is the feeling of Zen. That is the moment of Zen. Now, that's what they say, but I might have talked to God. I don't know. What I figured out through all of it was that it doesn't matter if God exists. That's what I realized, and that's that my heart says, is that it doesn't matter. It's not. You don't want to have the argument whether he exists or not, or what heaven is, and what religion is right. None of that shit matters. The only thing that matters is that we're happiest and we're most fulfilled when we're working on life goals that we feel from our heart, and that we do something about it. If this is a simulation, then that's your programming, and you should fulfill it, even if it's something bad. Because you don't know what your purpose is, and you don't know what your role is, but you feel better, and there's a reward system built into it when you're working towards those goals, and you put in a hard day's labor, and it doesn't fucking matter because you feel good at the end because you did something about what was in your heart. So, but that's my story about that. Now, as far as retrospect about the whole thing, again, I tried to tell the story in the most present way. I haven't told that in a very long time, but I don't really. I might turn off the comments. I don't really want compliments. I don't really want that kind of feedback. I just want to share the story, and I hope that you don't need to go through that experience. You don't need to go through the things that I've gone through in order to follow your heart. All you got to do is just follow your heart. And that usually means being a good person. If it means being a bad person, then be the best bad person that you could possibly be. I don't know what this is. I don't know what life is or what it's about. All I know is that I'm happiest when I'm doing something that I follow my heart. Now, some years later, when I got on risperidone to help with I found out I was bipolar. I didn't know. And that's when I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. The risperidone helps me sleep, and it also helps with the manic. And it is technically an antipsychotic, And yes, I can be psychotic. And the way that my family's traditionally treated that was through alcohol abuse. And but I've tried really hard to reprogram my RNA and my life and to be a better person and to do the right thing. And it's led me to some crazy, wonderful stuff, but I got to live with myself at the end of this life or situation or simulation or whatever this is and know that I did my best and I did it my way. And that's what I'm trying to do with making movies and things like that. I ended up having this really wonderful dream on Christmas Day 2007. And that's when I realized that I need to make movies. And that's what I'm going to probably do for the rest of my life. So, but I tell you this story because I love you and I want to tell stories for a living. And I want to be one of the creative factors at Tesla or whatever the name that's going to be called, like Company X or whatever it's called, the parent company for SpaceX and Neuralink and Tesla and Boring Company. I want there to be another company called, what is it called? Starlink. Starlink Studios, which would be the media division content provider for the Starlink network. And so that's what I want to start. And that's why I reserved StarlinkStudios.com. And I'll be making a 30-second promo as if it already exists. And I'm hoping that Elon will see it and he'll give me the green light. And then it's off to the races. And then it becomes a real race to do as much as I possibly can before I die. And that's it. That's the story. I love you guys. Have a good night. We're going to finish patrolling and checking in dumpsters. I don't know. There's something satisfying about it. But, well, you know, just checking for people jacking off or doing drugs and saying, get out of here. So, but get out of here, guys. I love you. I will talk to you later.